Hey everybody, what's going on? Dr. Chad Woolner here.
Dr. Buddy Allen.
And this is episode 1 of the Health Fundamentals Podcast. Welcome. On today's episode, we're going to be discussing the question, is moderation a bad thing? So let's get started. You're listening to the Health Fundamentals Podcast. I'm Dr. Chad Woolner.
And I'm Dr. Buddy Allen. And this show is about giving you the simple but powerful cutting-edge tools you need to change your health and your life.
So sit back and enjoy the show as we show you the path to your best life down to a science. So hey everybody, welcome to the episode. This is our inaugural episode. There's been a lot of thought and energy that has gone into this, and so we're excited to finally launch the podcast. As a quick introduction, my name is Dr. Chad Woolner. I'm a chiropractic physician here in Meridian, Idaho.
I'm Dr. Buddy Allen. I am also a chiropractic physician here in Idaho. Been doing it for a good lot of years, 15 plus years, and love it.
Yeah. And we've known each other for, going
10,
on 12 years,
yeah.
Almost 12 years. I moved here to Idaho after finishing school and started working for you. And a couple years, and then after about a year, started my own practice. And Dr. Allen joined us about 4 years ago here, and we've since integrated our clinic. And it's been a ton of fun, and it's just been a really great experience working with Dr. Allen, and we've just learned a lot over the years. And this podcast has been something that we have been talking about for, well over 2 years.
Yeah.
And so now we're finally pulling the trigger on it, launching the podcast. We're excited. And basically our whole approach with this podcast, the Health Fundamentals, is really our intent behind this is to really give people actionable but simple concepts, strategies, tactics, tools that they can use and apply into their life to have a dramatic impact for good, to help them improve their health and ultimately improve their life. And so we wanted to kind of kick off our first episode by first introducing what we call kind of the framework, the lens in which we see the world. We've had, like I said, collectively over 20 years of experience working with patients in a variety of different capacities, both from a chiropractic clinic, from an integrated clinic now, and then also Dr. Allen has done a lot of health coaching over his years, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But to kind of set the stage, let me just kind of introduce, for those who are watching this show, and whether you're watching or listening, we're going to go over it the same, but we created what we call the 5 fundamentals of health. And this is kind of our declaration of really a framework that I think people can see and embrace that would really help them maybe simplify the way that they look at improving health. Because again, if you look at the information that's out there, sometimes things can get really, really complicated.
We are incredibly good as human beings at taking something that is fairly simple and complicating the heck out of it.
Absolutely.
And just making it way more difficult than it need be.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dr. Allen, you want to introduce the 5 fundamentals of health?
Absolutely. So again, 5 fundamentals, just coming back down to, there's a few simple things that we need to remember and understand and focus on to be able to move forward in a very positive direction in our life. And so we basically start out by saying we believe that the highest levels of health are going to be achieved when, 1, we understand the truth that health comes from the inside. All right. It's coming from within, not because we're missing something from the outside in. Okay. Number 2, our approach towards health is one of simplicity and consistency. Once again, coming back to, we're really good at complicating things in our lives. It comes down to a few simple things done consistently over time will make a tremendous difference in the outcomes of our lives.
Yeah. And that's not to say that you shouldn't have the right information. Sometimes people are missing some things.
Sure.
But again, more often than not, the things that they're missing are just simple little tweaks here and there. And hopefully you can get that from this podcast. You know, some of those answers, some of those insights, some of those things you may not be aware of or familiar with.
You bet.
So,
Number 3, our body is functioning correctly both mechanically and chemically, all right? Our bodies are both, we have moving parts, both inside and out. And if things aren't on a functioning level and we're not doing things correctly, then what's going to happen is we're going to start having hidden things start to show their face. We're going to start having symptoms.
Yeah. Chemical breakdown, mechanical breakdown, either
Absolutely.
way. Yeah. Number 4.
And then lastly, we are mentally, emotionally, and spiritually in tune.
One more. That's 4. We got one more.
One more. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah. And number 5.
Sorry, I was getting excited.
Yeah. Don't miss number 5. This is an important one.
And then the 5th one is that we're fueling ourselves properly. All right. It comes down to a few simple things that we can be doing to making sure we're feeding our body right, we're fueling our body right, because ultimately, as cliche as this sounds, we are what we eat. It's more true than people understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so the thing that's been really interesting, we've seen over the course of our time, both working together and by ourselves, the vast majority of people that struggle with health issues, this shouldn't come as any sort of a surprise to people, but the vast majority of people that are struggling with real significant problems are people that are dealing with chronic health problems, not acute health problems, or not some sort of a rare disease. There are those people who do struggle with those things, but hence the term rare. Those are the exceptions and not the rule. And so most people that we work with on a regular day-to-day basis are people that have just let some of these things slip over time. Maybe they've just lost track. Maybe they just didn't know, or a combination of those two things. And really, at the end of the day, getting people to a better place in their life is really, one way or another, focusing on one or more of these 5 fundamentals, right?
Absolutely.
Which kind of brings us to the question that we wanted to kind of tackle in episode number 1. The term that has kind of taken a beating over the past, couple of years that I've seen on social media here and there, and is this term moderation. Both Dr. Allen and I, you're going to find, while we don't agree on everything, maybe, I don't know, I think most things we see pretty eye to eye on. That's why we get along. That's why we're able to. A partnership in business is much like a marriage, right? And so, but the thing that he and I have both understood over the years is that we see fairly eye to eye in terms of moderation, that moderation isn't a bad thing, and yet it's kind of taken a beating in social media. I've seen several instances where people will say things like, moderation will kill you, and it's not about moderation. Moderation is a lie. And I can appreciate to a degree where they're coming from. I'm not trying to play overly diplomatic here.
Sure.
But the problem is that what they're doing is I think and I believe they're addressing it from an inappropriate lens. They're not really talking about true moderation. I think sometimes people can use moderation as an excuse to indulge, right? We talked about this earlier, that somebody who's eating McDonald's once a day, that's moderation. No, that's not moderation, or somebody who, drinks soda pop twice a week. Moderation, well, even that's not moderation. You know what I mean? And so understanding what true moderation really is really the key here. And I think that's the thing that's unfortunate, is moderation has kind of gotten a bad rap because it's been, I think, largely misunderstood or used as people have kind of camouflaged bad behavior, poor choices under that banner of it being moderation, right?
Well, and people, again, Dr. Woolner mentioned that I had done a lot of health coaching over the years, working with people in weight loss. And it's interesting because the problem is we have a tendency, when people are talking about moderation, we're trying to fit everybody, or they're trying to fit everybody in the same box, right? And the reality is we're all different. All right.
Absolutely.
Some people, when it comes to making changes in their lives, need someone that just pats them on the back and says, "You're doing a great job. You know what? You're doing awesome." Other people need a drill sergeant.
Right.
Some people, you give them the right path, and it's like, you don't ever have to talk to them again.
They're self-directed.
They will take it and run with it. Okay.
So true.
So when you start talking about moderation, it's one of these people that are like, they're probably the type A that's very self-directed, very driven in one direction, and they live a very rigid life. Okay. Yeah. And unfortunately, that doesn't work for everybody.
It's not a one size fits all.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, and that's really cool. What's neat is Dr. Allen's experience over the years doing health coaching. That has been an incredible education in terms of human nature, in terms of the psychology of change. Right.
Absolutely.
Is really what we're talking about. And at the end of the day, and I think that's maybe a good shift that we can kind of end with in terms of this episode, is talk about that. Like, how does moderation play into this idea of change? We talked about this, right? In terms of, when we look at polar extremes, it seems today anymore these days that's what gets most of the attention today. When you look at the news, when you look at politics, when you look at current affairs, when you look at all of these things, the headlines are extremely polarizing one way or another. And the challenge there is that the polar ends get most of the attention, and what happens is moderation gets kind of a bad rap there too, because it's not as exciting. It's not nearly as enticing.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, but the thing is when we're talking about true long-term consistent change over time, rarely do the extremes provide any sort of a long-term solution. Sure, you can use extremes. And I would even argue that there is a time and a place sometimes for extreme measures temporarily.
Absolutely.
But in terms of the overall, if we're looking for long-term permanent change, it's got to be sustainable. And the key to sustainability is going to be moderation. It really is. Consistency and simplicity, the things we've been kind of saying here. And the way that I look at it, this is kind of the way that I frame it, and you can kind of share your experience with this too, is if you look at two polar extremes in terms of the way people's psychology is, on one end of the spectrum, one extreme end, you have what we call self-defeating behaviors and attitudes. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have self-deceiving behaviors and attitudes. And neither of those two polar ends are good for us, right? And what I mean by that, let me give some context here. The self-defeating is when somebody isn't living up to the standard that they feel they should be living up to. They impose self-punishment, whether it be negative self-talk, mm-hmm. or they'll punish themselves by saying, okay, well, tomorrow I've got to, to make up for my poor behavior today, I've got to, and they assign whatever punishment due, or even worse, what they'll do is they'll indulge in certain comforting behaviors to help assuage the pain of the self-defeating negative self-talk, et cetera, et cetera. And then on the other end, it's interesting because on the self-deceiving end of it, we're really good at lying to ourselves and softening things and not being realistic with ourselves. I had a patient some years ago who told me he only had to lose 40 pounds, which in and of itself was, he had way more to lose than just 40 pounds. But even that, he acted like 40 pounds was no big deal. And 40 pounds is in the grand scheme of things, that's a huge deal. That can make a huge difference in somebody's life for the good or the bad. And so right in the middle is really the operative term in moderation that we're going for, is this idea, this concept of self-awareness, right? And so maybe you can kind of talk a little bit about that in terms of your experience health coaching with people, finding that kind of that middle ground where they can be consistent with it.
Absolutely. You were talking about patients are, I would have to say, one of the best things I love about practicing is I get to learn from so many different people, their experiences, the things that they do, and learn, like, ooh, that was awesome, and that's not so awesome. I mean, right. We have patients that come in that are 80 pounds overweight. Their blood pressure is normal only because they take a ton of medication for it. Right. And yet when they're asked how would they rate their health, they put excellent. Right. All right. So that's completely self-deceiving. Yeah. Exactly. So if that's how your mind is working, or you need to lose 80 pounds and you say, oh, I just need to lose 40 pounds. All right. It's like, yeah, 40 pounds is great, but you're shooting yourself well short of where you need to be headed. Right. And then on the other side, as far as finding that happy place is on the other extreme. I've had people, and literally, I had a gal once years ago lose 100 pounds, and she had another, I think, 40 or 50 pounds she wanted to lose. She was doing amazing. She had one weekend where they went to the Oregon coast. I believe she had a bowl of clam chowder, and in her mind, she had failed. Yeah. And from that point on, she went to go on and gain all that 100 pounds back, because again, that whole I'm a failure, I'm not good. So she fell right back
all
in
or nothing type thinking. Yeah.
And so the reality is again, who we are today is a compilation of our daily habits, routines, and actions. Okay. Yeah. And so if we consistently each year are putting on a few extra pounds, or 5 or 10 extra pounds, the reality is we've got to get some things in check really quickly, okay? Because it's not just because you can't blame it on DNA. You can't blame it on your parents, or injuries. I mean, there's lots of different extenuating circumstances, but the reality is the things I do on a day-to-day basis, when I wake up, when I go to bed, when I eat, what I'm drinking, all of those things play a part in who I am today.
Yeah.
So the best way, as far as from a moderation standpoint, is and to be able to really give a very self-aware look at where I'm at, it's where was I a year ago? Okay. Was I better or was I worse? All right. Because if I'm improving, that's wonderful. Yeah. All right. And are there things I could do to improve even more? And again, the extremes, you can do extreme things for a short period of time. Extreme things are, if not impossible, they're incredibly hard to maintain.
Right.
All right. So it's like from a very moderate standpoint, moderation is just about finding something that works, learning what to eat, how to eat, still being able to eat the things that you enjoy, but also be able to maintain your health. Right. There is a balance there.
Absolutely.
And as much as, some people may gain weight easier than others, I promise you can figure out the tweaks in your life to make it to where, and I talk about weight because I have a ton of experience with that, but the same energy true. It takes to lose weight is the same exact energy it takes to get stronger, takes to get better in business, to
heal injuries,
exactly.
overcome health challenges, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, through this podcast, you'll hear me refer to that a lot because I have a ton of experience with working with people in the weight loss realm. And again, it's that same energy that we're trying to tap into to be able to make good, positive changes in our lives. And everything that we're talking about, again, that moderation is about learning how to, using like our 5 fundamentals of health.
Yeah.
To simplify your life, but at the same token, by simplifying it, actually simplify it in a positive direction.
Right. And let's kind of end with kind of 2 concepts that we want to drive home. Let's get really tactical for people who are listening to this. They're like, that's good and fine, finding that balance, right? Finding that self-awareness, right? We talked about one in self-deceiving, the other in self-defeating, right? Behaviors. If we're looking for that self-awareness, how do we go about doing that? Well, I would propose, and feel free to add to this, Dr. Allen, I would propose a simple tactical thing that you could do starting right now or starting tomorrow. Better, sooner the better, right?
Absolutely.
There's a great book called Atomic Habits, and I learned this from that book. Phenomenal book. In fact, we're going to be referencing a lot of great books. A lot of the concepts that I've kind of developed in this realm come from another great book called The Willpower Instinct by Dr. Kelly McGonigal, which is a phenomenal book in and of itself. But in the book Atomic Habits, one of the things he talks about in terms of finding consistency is that far too often we focus our efforts on the what, right? And he says a simple little tweak, which is very profound when you think about it, is he says focus on who instead of what. And meaning, who do you want to be? What not necessarily what do you need to do, but what do you want to become? Who do you want to become? Meaning creating a clear, true self-identity, right? That I want to be, and at my core, I believe myself to be this type of an individual. I believe at my core, I'm somebody who values health. So therefore, I'm a healthy person, right? And you may not, at the beginning, you may not necessarily buy into that. You may not believe it, but you have to some level or another, get deep enough inside to really peel away at the negative self-talk and the negative self-image and really carve away to the essence of who you really, truly desire most ardently to become. And that becomes the kind of guiding tension, and we'll talk about the idea of tension moving forward and stuff, but to pull you towards changing the appropriate behaviors. Because if you can truly convince yourself of your real identity and not a fake identity based off of either self-deception or self-defeating attitudes and behaviors, that will be a sufficiently strong and powerful guiding force, we'll call it, to dictate apparent behaviors. Because really, when all is said and done, we as human beings, we need congruency in our lives. If there are things that are incongruent, we will either rise or fall to meet that identity, right? If we believe at our core that we're unhealthy, unworthy, slobs, pathetic, you will change your behaviors accordingly to meet that identity. We'll either rise or fall to the occasion, so to speak, right? And so really getting a clear image of your core identity, right? So literally what you could do tactically is literally write that down in a journal. Today or tomorrow, ideally today. Write it down. Who are you at your core? Or at least who are you striving to become? Really identify with that. When you identify with that, that will create a certain amount of self-awareness that will then allow you to create behaviors. And then the things that you do on a regular basis, the habits that you develop, you can judge those habits against you. You now have a standard, right? I am this person. I want to become this person. This is the ideal that I'm striving for. Would a healthy person do this thing? Would a healthy person eat out, regularly? No, they wouldn't. Would a healthy person get up early in the morning and exercise? Yeah, they probably would. Would a healthy person study more about nutrition? You know what I mean? Let that be the guiding kind of pull to create the necessary tension. So that would be kind of the first thing. And then the other thing that you had kind of mentioned, I'm drawing a blank on it now. We were talking about it. I lost my train of thought. But you had been talking about your experience health coaching. Golly, it'll come to me. But what were you going to say? Anything add to that?
You had mentioned 2 books, and one of the other books that as we've been talking, and really that kind of I think initially led us to thinking about these 5 fundamentals of health was The Compound Effect.
Oh, great
by
book.
Darren Hardy.
Great book.
Wonderful book, and a very simple, easy read, but very powerful in that we all have the ability to change. All right,
dramatically change.
Yeah, and we've Dr. Wollner frequently talks about the beauty between our 24-hour day period, where we literally get a daily do-over every morning.
Daily resets.
So we can reset, just because the past 10 years haven't served us, it doesn't mean tomorrow can't.
Yep.
All right. And so what I would say is in kind of closing my thoughts for this morning, and as we begin this podcast is, you know what? We all, and the reason we're doing this is because we all need help to get better, to improve. We
Absolutely.
all need coaching, all right? And really the best of all individuals, whether it be in business, whether it be in sports, no matter what it is, everybody has mentors, tutors, coaches, people that help them, that actually see more in them than they can actually see in themselves.
Yeah.
All right. And they help us become better. And so our whole goal with this is we hopefully can help you think about things differently, find that energy and that willpower within yourselves to kind of change, to want to move forward in a different direction. The beauty with, again, those daily do-overs is just because yesterday was terrible, doesn't mean tomorrow or today can't be fantastic.
Yep. Tomorrow hasn't written itself yet.
Exactly.
So that's a great point that you bring up there. Yeah, and I would just simply say that, that if worse comes to worst case scenario here for you, if you don't feel that in yourself, lean on us right now. Yep. Lean on this podcast. Let this podcast be I know this might sound cliche and cheesy, but let it be a beacon of light and hope to you that things can change and that they will change. And hopefully that's what we can provide for you guys is the necessary tools, strategies, and motivation to really help you make significant breakthroughs and changes in your life in terms of your overall health and well-being. So anything else you want to add?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you guys so much for listening to this first episode. We're looking forward to sharing a whole lot more with you guys. It's going to be great. This has been a ton of fun already. I know I am just going to really, really enjoy this whole process and this journey of going through and just sharing a lot of the inside conversations that Dr. Allen and I have on a fairly regular basis. We're definitely not for a lack of opinions on things, and so we're ready to share it. But hopefully you recognize to some degree or another that our opinions are based off of collectively a lot of experience that we've had over the years. And so we know a thing or two about helping people make changes in their life and get healthier. And so we hope that you'll join us along the way and subscribe to this podcast and enjoy this process with us. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening to the Health Fundamentals Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so that you stay in the loop and in the know with all of the cutting-edge health information that we share. If you know other people that could benefit from this information, please share it with them as well. Also, be sure to give us a review. These really help us to ultimately help more people. Last but not least, if you have questions that you want answered live on the show, or if you have ideas for topics that you would like us to cover, please shoot us an email and let us know at info@thehealthfundamentals.com.